Whether you are a donor, a recipient, or just someone who is really into pushing yourself physically in the spirit of competition, be sure to check out the National Kidney Registry's donor games at livingdonorgames.org. The 2024 schedule of virtual open competitions will drop in mid-October, and you'll be able to register for these events starting in November. Welcome to episode 2 of One is Enough, the official podcast of the National Kidney Registry. There's a bit of buzz in the air around here because we are recording this episode just days before our third annual Donor Games Championship being held in Stamford, Connecticut. Not even sure if I know what that is, but this is a pretty special event for a group of really elite living donor athletes, and we wanted to take this opportunity while it's literally right here in front of us to discuss it in the podcast. In addition to the 2 donor athletes we'll be speaking with, who better to talk donor games with than my co-host, Samantha Hill. Now, Samantha, since you've been around since the advent, that's a big word.
Kidney donation?
No, the advent, well, sort
I feel
of.
really old.
Samantha, that was the last episode.
That was the first episode.
Yeah.
Yes, you're correct.
No, since the advent of donor games, I was hoping you could give some background as to why the National Kidney Registry decided to create and sponsor the donor games.
You know, I feel like my role on this podcast is just to be a living archive of why we did stuff.
Well, if we didn't have you, then we wouldn't have a podcast. So
This is true.
relish in that moment.
I don't know if I should, but anyway, so the reason we created the donor games, it was kind of a twofold situation. So one, there's this idea out there that living kidney donation negatively impacts your physical ability.
Yeah.
Post-donation.
I think there's a study, right? Like 75%.
Yeah, correct. So when we first started, it was actually at 80%.
Wow.
The population believed that donating a kidney negatively impacts your health post-donation. Since we've started the donor games, that number has dropped to 75. We hope for it to go lower.
Wow.
The other side of that was, quite honestly, I think we were just a little bit bored during COVID and trying to figure out a way to get some momentum in the community of donors on something that our founder, my father, absolutely adored, which was working out. So
He does love the donor games, right?
he really does. Unfortunately, he cannot participate. There were a couple of comments in some of the YouTube videos lately about the donor games, you know, wondering where he's been and whatnot. Unfortunately, he's been injured. So
This
he's
must
not
crush
allowed.
him.
It does. You have no idea. He's miserable. He wishes he could do it so badly.
Is he going to show up to this donor games to support all the elite athletes?
Yes, he will definitely be there. He will be
Awesome.
cheering everybody on. He'll probably, you know, be pushing a certain few of his buddies up there that he talks to and trash talks with routinely throughout the year. He'll definitely be there, and he'll definitely be having fun on that. But I'm sure part of him will be hurting that he can't be working out with everybody.
So the first Donor Games Virtual Open was held in June of 2022. Do you remember how many contestants or competitors you had?
No, but actually, I believe it was actually a little before that.
Oh, was it?
So it was an unofficial one, but it was started by a donor by the name of Kevin Kilkenny out of Long Island, who just happened to know my father. He didn't even donate through the NKR, but he donated on behalf of his brother a long time ago. And he sent an email blast to a couple of his PT patients. He's a physical therapist. And he said, hey, let's do a push-up challenge since none of us can go to the gym because it's 2020. Whoever can do the most or closest to 400 or some ridiculous number.
Right.
And so that kind of got everything started.
That's pretty cool. Could you describe a couple of the opens that we had throughout the year that led us to this championship that's going to happen in a few days?
Yeah, there was certainly a large variety of open competitions this year. We actually introduced 2 new ones. The Bonnyman was the new one, right? I know the swim was, but the Bonnyman was the other one, right? Okay, so we introduced 2 new workouts this year. One being the Bonnyman and the other actually being a swim. And the swim was because of an online poll we took of general athletes to say, okay, well, if we move away from the CrossFit ideal a little bit, what would you like to see? And swim was one of the highest ranks. So we did that as a donors only, just because we were a little worried that would be hard to judge. And it turned out great. We got a bunch of new donors to the competition, completely new faces. It was awesome. Mike, do you have any idea how many athletes we're expecting for this event this year?
I think I do, because I did all their bios this morning. I believe it's 9 women and 11 men. And if my math serves me right, and I really am not good at math, that comes to 20.
I think that works, yes. I don't think we need a calculator for that one.
Gosh, Mrs. McGillicuddy, my math teacher from 4th grade would be so happy.
She's probably dead, but sure.
And I didn't have a teacher, Mrs. McGillicuddy. Okay. I think it's pretty safe to say that the Donor Games has proven that an individual can donate a kidney and return to optimal athletic performance post-donation when you see what some of these athletes are able to do in these competitions.
In honor of the Donor Games, we are pleased to be joined by basically the queen of the Donor Games, Mimi Mahon, who has been in pretty much, I think, every single Open we've ever had.
Yeah.
Has won every championship we've ever had for the women's donors.
I think
and almost won almost every Open as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, was there even any question as to, who to have on to talk about the Donor Games?
No, definitely not.
So Mimi is a living donor. She donated in 2017 on behalf of her mother, Nikki, who has also competed with us a few times in the recipient category. Mimi went back to work as a collegiate softball and strength coach 2.5 weeks after surgery.
Wow.
Definitely going to have to ask her about that.
Absolutely.
She has since opened her own gym, Mahon Strength and Fitness, and has expanded her family with the birth of her 2 sons, Nico and Luca, since donating. So she's been busy.
They
are the most adorable children.
I see them on Facebook.
I see them on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm old, so I do Facebook.
Clearly. Mimi, thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's stop talking like you're not in the room. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. And you put a large target on my back for Saturday with that introduction. So that's perfect. Everyone's going to be coming for me.
Yeah,
I
but
think you put that target. I think you put that target on yourself when you won everything.
I know. I'm excited, but we have some good competition. So
it's going to be awesome.
This is true. So who are you worried about?
I would say since day one, Ronnie and Darlene. I think the 3 of us go head to head, but there's a lot of new names, coming in, a lot of new faces. But I have a lot of respect for Ronnie and Darlene. They're really good athletes.
I mean, Ronnie and Darlene have also been kind of like you and been in since pretty much the beginning. Not quite as since you have, but they definitely been in for a while as well. And it's always fun to see them. They're such wonderful people. But there are some new faces, which should make things interesting. We're hoping it makes things interesting.
I have to tell you, after last year's championship, sat down with Ronnie, eating lunch after it's all said and done, and she said, there's a hashtag going around in her family. Hashtag beat Mimi.
Really?
2023.
Talk about a target.
I was like, all right.
So did you poison her lunch?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
That kind of ties into the first question I want to ask you is, what?
How does poisoning tie into a question, Mike? Maybe you're totally allowed to plead the fifth on this show, okay?
I read in an article somewhere that you poisoned your last competitor and that it goes to the first question that I wanted to ask you, which is, how did you ever even hear about the Donor Games?
So I remember seeing an ad on Facebook, and I think I was tagged in a post, but I thought, this is not real life. I cannot believe there's an online CrossFit competition for specifically kidney donors. So I thought, well, let's see what this is about. And it happened to be kind of during the height of the pandemic. I was living in Boston. I was training, and I just gathered a bunch of my training clients and friends, and we went to a park and put up the phone and did it. I think still to this day, I will say the most stressful part of those online competitions is the recording of the competitions. I think that first one was like a 45-minute workout. And I'm like, is my phone going to turn off in the middle of this and I'm going to have to restart? Or, so that's always, I think that's the most stressful part, is just videoing them. But as Samantha said earlier, I think during that time we were all kind of looking for something to do. So it came into my life at the perfect time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you are not alone in thinking that the most stressful part is getting the video correct. We've had to have people redo it simply because the video was wrong. We couldn't see certain things and whatnot. So That can get really tricky. And we try to be as clear as we can on where to put the camera, but inevitably human error happens.
It's just technology. It's
Yep.
tough, but
Gets in the way.
Absolutely.
So what makes this competition so special to you?
Well, like I said, I think during that time I was really looking for something, to compete in or to do. And fast forwarding a few years later, I just can't believe that it's growing as much as it has. And I'm still having this opportunity to compete. Going back to, we talked about I donated in 2017. I did go back to coaching right away. But the biggest thing is I just kind of thought, for me, I wasn't going to be an athlete anymore. I was coaching and I love coaching, but I still like being an athlete myself, as you probably can see through these competitions. So I just thought, after donating that I would still train and work out, but it just wouldn't be at the same intensity. I was a little scared of too much strength training or just some of the things I had heard about protein intake to support muscle growth and all these things. And then when the Donor Games came into my lap in 2020 and I started training with more of a purpose, I've seen big changes in my own health and fitness because of it. So I actually feel healthier now than I think I did before donating. So it just really gives me passion and purpose.
So you mentioned that you thought you were going to have to stop. Mm-hmm. You actually believe that after donating, you would have to not work out like you loved. Mm-hmm. Why is that? What happened?
So I distinctly remember prior to donating, I did compete in a lot of different things. I did CrossFit, I did powerlifting, bodybuilding, strongman, where you like pull cars down the street.
Trucks.
I did trucks. I have pictures. Yeah. Sometimes they pop up on my Facebook time hop and I'm
really?
like, what, I did that?
That's
but
cool.
I did do that and I loved it because after playing, I played college softball, and after playing college sports, I was just looking for a competitive outlet. And I happened to go to a gym that did a lot of those kind of outlier sports like strongman and powerlifting and that sort of thing. So I lifted a lot. And I actually, at the time, I moved to Indianapolis to be closer to my mom when I did donate. So I was living just about 2 hours away. And I remember sitting in the gym that I was training at, getting ready to do a back squat. And the coach at the time was very proud that I wanted to donate, but very concerned for me. Like you could just tell. He was like, "Are you sure? Like, if you can't do the things that you love to do, are you sure?" And that was kind of what I had been told, that I wouldn't be able to lift like I was, or just to be aware of certain precautions. Like we talk a lot about protein intake and that sort of thing. So I just remember standing there thinking, that's okay. I'd rather do this for my mom. It's not about me. Mm-hmm. And then now, 7 years later, my mom's doing well and I'm doing well and I can do everything that I want. So now my purpose now, and the Donor Games has completely helped facilitate this, is to kind of debunk some of those myths even around how much protein you can have.
Right.
I track my protein every day, how much protein I'm intaking. And I was really concerned about that. And actually, I went and had my labs tested this past January, and my creatinine level is the best it's ever been now.
What was it?
It was 1.31 after donating, and now I'm down to 1.2, which is just the top end of healthy.
Oh my gosh. I found something that I could beat Mimi Mahon.
What is yours?
1.12.
That just means I have more muscle than you.
That is not surprising.
Yeah, so if you have more muscle mass, your creatinine is usually a little higher. But I'll give it to you.
This is something that I learned recently from my nephrologist about protein intake, and it's kind of from the recipient side, as my stuff usually is, in that the idea that protein negatively impacts your kidney, or you shouldn't have it if your kidneys are going down. Obviously, speak to your doctor first. I'm not a doctor, but the idea of it comes from the fact that when you process protein, your body produces creatine, which is very closely linked to creatinine, and can thus show an elevated creatinine because you've eaten a lot of meat, but it's an artificial inflation. So it might look like your kidney's not doing as well as it is, but it just means that you maybe had an extra burger the other night or something.
Wow.
So
This went to like a whole medical show now.
it did, and none of us have any medical degrees. Talk to your doctor first. Don't sue us.
Thank you for that public service announcement. Always talk to your doctor first.
Correct. We are not medical professionals.
Do not take the medical advice of Samantha and Michael.
But
Correct.
here's the thing.
Maybe Mimi, because she's a strength person,
Yes,
but
no, I cannot tell you how much protein to have for an individual.
That's true.
However, I think the takeaway is that cookie cutter advice is not the way to go. So, if a doctor says like it's going to take this much time to recover and you're going to be able to do this or not be able to do this, or this is how much protein and this is how, you have to start to learn your own body. And I think what's really, been prevalent with the donor games is there are a group of very active, elite donors, if you will, that live a little bit of a different lifestyle. And then people can hopefully realize that they don't have to have those limitations on their lifestyle after donating.
yeah, absolutely. So having competed in everything, and like I said earlier, you are kind of the queen of the donor games. You're one of the biggest proponents for getting new workouts into the rotation, and I always try to push that myself on your behalf. But so we have added some new ones this year. But even of the old ones, what been your favorite?
So I think most people would say that I would pick Grace, 30 clean and jerks for time, because that's kind of a wheelhouse workout for me. I was proud to continue to PR that over the last couple times that we've done. I think we've done it, 3 or 4 times. But
That one we do every year.
But that's
'Cause
not
it's
my
easy to
favorite. What were you
judge.
going to say?
I'm raising my
Yes.
hand for all of those you can't see. What is a clean and jerk?
It's taking the barbell from the ground to over your head.
Oof, okay.
Yeah.
It's very painful
95 pounds.
for women.
So you would think that's my favorite because it's
Absolutely.
in my wheelhouse. But the truth is, I like the variations of Murph because I don't like doing Murph. So you all, thank you, have made me step up my game.
Wow.
Because I really don't like to do it. And so I, prior to the donor games, I have done Murph maybe 2 or 3 times. And I avoid it. I'm like, I don't want to do that workout.
Nobody
100
does.
pull-ups. And because of the donor games, I have really stepped up my body weight strength game with pull-ups and push-ups and air squats and trying to be more efficient with those movements. So, if it's easy, it's not worth it. I like a good challenge.
I think you're the only person alive who would say she likes the Murph
Yeah.
the most.
Because I don't like it, I like it.
I feel like this is a one is enough exclusive.
I think so too.
Everybody who's listening, and we said this before, we have millions of listeners. Mimi Mahon loves the Murph.
It's one guy in his basement.
We haven't confirmed that yet.
It's Sebastian in his basement.
So you are obviously passionate about health and fitness and also passionate about living kidney donation. We talk a lot on this podcast about normalizing the conversation about living kidney donation. And obviously that happened for you because of your mom's health. But what do you think moves the needle for other elite athletes like yourself to start considering kidney donation?
I think, like I talked about, it's just realizing that there's no limitations after donating. And I say this a lot too, but you gain more than you lose through donating. My joke in the past has been that you lose one kidney, but I think that your heart has to grow. And I know you can relate to that, Mike, because it just makes you feel different. You gain empathy and your perspective changes in all the best ways. Your relationships are better because you care about people more and you realize what the body's capable of. So I just think continuing to get that out there, that by giving, you're getting way more ultimately.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I don't know if you've seen this in the news, like speaking of how CrossFit is intertwined with the donor games, is there's 2 really great athletes, Tia Toomey, who's the reigning champion of the CrossFit games, and Annie Thor's daughter. And they both had babies recently and came back really quickly. And that was inspiring to me because that's such a huge hit on the body to have a baby. And I think that's like, to me, I compare those a lot just because of how the surgery is. Mike, again, wouldn't know about that. I don't know about that. But I can imagine that, having a major abdominal surgery and
Sure.
the recovery, I work with a lot of pre-postnatal clients. And it seems like there's a lot of similarities in terms of like the beating that the core takes and getting that back and building the strength. So with all that being said, I think seeing more women be able to have babies and bounce back and compete at that high level, that correlates to donating a kidney and bouncing back at a high level. So continuing to see, I'm going to shout out the strong women being able to go through these things with their body and then come back even stronger after. I mean, that's so inspiring to me. So I think, just continuing to showcase what we can do.
Well, on that note, you came back pretty quick. You were back to training 2.5 weeks after. I mean, that's pretty fast. I know when my donor donated, it was actually kind of funny. He was running around Times Square because he'd never been to Manhattan before, a day and a half after donating, to the point where the surgeons were telling us, okay, he's not listening to us. You guys have to tell him to slow down or he's going to hurt himself. And we were like, we have no control over this man. Are you kidding me? He's 23 and been in Manhattan for the first time with his family. And he's, related to my father. There's no hope. But, what was that recovery like being so fast for you? Because that is quick. What were you told by the specialist that you saw?
I was told 4 to 6 weeks to take 4 to 6 weeks off. I was coaching college softball at the time. We did have a camp for high school athletes, like a recruiting camp at the 3-week mark. And so I actually was like, well, I have to go back to work. We have a camp and I'm going. And I think my family thought, Mimi, you're crazy, but you always do what you want to do. So we're not going to stop you this time. So I went back to work. It had its challenges. Let's be real. That's a very physical job to coach softball. So there was a couple changes I had to make, but all in all, it was great. And I think if you can do a physical job like that a few weeks after, and then that was the start of our season. It didn't get easier. That was the start of an entire, 3-month softball season where I'm hitting batting practice. Hitting ground balls, throwing batting practice, doing a lot of physical work day in and day out.
Mm-hmm.
So you're about to embark upon your 3rd Donor Games Championship, defending your crown, so to speak. Any thoughts on how far the Donor Games has come since 2020, and how would you like to see the Donor Games grow in the future?
So we said there's 9 women competing. How many did we have the last 2 years? I think it was only
about 10. So it's been in that ballpark at the championship. We've certainly been growing in our opens, especially bringing in that swim and bringing in, more aerobic athletes versus CrossFit athletes. So we have been bringing more in, but for the championship, we've got 9.
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of growth. Like just thinking about the beginning. I mean, I've said, Ronnie, Darlene, such great athletes, but there's just more and more really strong women that are coming into it. And to be honest with you, I enjoy watching the men. Like sometimes in between my events, I really should be resting, but we've got a good battle over there. You got Justin, Jay. I'm a big Garrett fan, so I'm upset when you said he's not competing. That kind of,
Well, I was hoping that someone would unseat the male champion from last year, which is a
default male champion,
young gentleman named Cody Maynard, who will be competing this year. And I think he started doing a little bit of a dance when he heard that Garrett was not going to be competing, because I think Garrett would crush him
easily.
I'd love to see that matchup. I think Justin is going to do well. We'll see. Cody is a question mark because I know he's had some things going on as well too. So we'll see. I think he plays a lot of pickleball these days. I don't know how much he's working on his pull-up game.
I don't know how much that'll help for CrossFit.
I like pickleball, but what would you like to see in the future for the Donor Games? Like, are there things that we haven't done that you'd like to?
Yeah, if you could design a workout, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but if you could design a workout, what would you have us do?
Well, first, I would like to see the regional competitions that I know there's been some talk about, like trying to, I know, logistically that's a bigger project, but although the virtual is great, if we can get in person, of course, that's always the best. So if we could do that, that would be an amazing, kind of pivot from the virtual. And then in terms of a workout, I think because there are so many endurance athletes that are interested, I have thought about like a triathlon, but at the gym. So bike, run, row, something like that. That would be more for the championship. That would not be one that we would film, but I think
Yeah.
that would be cool.
Now, I know you can't tell by looking at me because I'm so physically fit, but what about for just normal people like me that I don't do CrossFit? I probably personally would not apply to compete in the Donor Games Championship. What about something for?
I've seen you walk a block at least.
Yeah, that's about as much as I can.
So the bike run.
Could I do that, Mimi?
Absolutely. I can't help what place you get in, but you can definitely finish it.
Well, you are you saying that if we come up with this,
I can actually help you.
if
Yeah,
we
you
wait,
do
wait,
that for a living.
You can be my project.
I would be.
2024.
Oh, I gotta see this.
2024. My project is to get you on the podium for one of the workouts.
It's probably gonna be the very short podium, but
I'm all in. Are you all in?
yeah.
Talk about an exclusive.
I think
I love
if I say yes, can we just edit it out? No.
No way. I'm not letting that happen.
They can't see this, but Sebastian
I'm gonna
just said
work
he's
on
not.
your programming tonight. I will have it too.
Get out of here. Do you know I have a bicycle at home too?
There we go.
It's from 1952 and
I
has a little pedally rosebud basket on it.
And you should see the bell. I go ding 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 ding. It's so cute.
Think about how inspiring it would be to see you step up your game.
You know what? That would be inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
And I think on
I'm
that
inspired.
I'm inspired right now. I'm fired up. I wish it was Saturday.
So do I for many other reasons, maybe. All right. Thank you for joining us today, Mimi. Thank you especially for putting Mike on the spot like that and getting him to finally work out. And for being such a champion of athletics and fitness in the donor community.
you can learn more about the podcast by visiting kidneyregistry.org/1. When you're there, you can sign up to be on our email list so that you'll be the first to know when we drop a new episode. And trust me, you want to be the first to know.